go to Don Huffines. Don, you're running for comptroller of Texas. First off, can you explain what the comptroller of Texas actually is, what it does, and why it's important? And then I want to ask you the questions about how does this tie in with this situation with Sharia law, sir?
Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate being on your show and everything you're doing for the state of Texas. And, in Texas, we don't need to be looking anywhere for our answers. We don't need to be looking to Washington. We're very independent. We've got a great heritage, and I'm glad you appreciate that. Our liberties were, or our foundation of our liberty is from the blood of Texas patriots. But let me tell you how important the comptroller's position is. A statewide elected position. And the cowboys that set our state constitution up in the 1870s, they wanted the comptroller to report to the people. I'm elected statewide. I don't report to the governor's office or to the state legislature. Statewide position. I'm the chief financial officer for the entire state. And I remind everybody how big and the scale of Texas. If we were our own country, we'd have the 8th largest GDP in the world. We're spending over $500 million every day, 7 days a week. I'm in charge of collecting all the revenue for the state. I'm in charge of setting the budget for the legislature, and I'm in charge of managing the money. But the thing I like the most about this position is I'm also in charge of the spending. And I have eyes and ears on all of that money that Texas is spending. And I've got a constitutional responsibility to make sure that money is being spent properly, effectively. And my goal is to root out fraud, waste, and abuse in over 200 state agencies. And I'm taking the position of any government, any state government or local government that uses Texas taxpayer money. I have a right to audit them. I have a right to find out how it's being spent. I have 3,000 employees. This position does its own law enforcement division, has over 80 attorneys in-house, and we have 600 auditors. I'm turning most of those auditors loose to audit government because I'm also a business guy. And I know that a dollar we don't spend is another dollar we've saved, and we can apply to our overburdensome property tax.
Can this, first, let me go back to the history because of my speech on Friday night.
Certainly.
I said the reason that there's a focus on this from throughout the world with these Sharia supremacists is because the great state of Texas, what it's meant in American history and what it means for the American people today. I call it, and I say this as a Virginian, Texas is the jewel in the crown of our union. But go back to the founding, the Cowboys in 1870, the pioneers in 1870. Even at that time, when government was very small, they wanted a financial person in that position, or a person in that position that reported to the people of Texas, did not report to the political elite. They could look downrange and understand that this state was going to be huge one day, right? There was already huge in land, but it was going to be huge in economic powerhouse. And they wanted somebody there as a guardian for the people, did they not?
Absolutely, they did. Of course, they really did. I mean, they had a lot of foresight for that. And our legislature only meets every other year for 140 days. And they didn't want the legislature signing the checkbook. And they didn't want the executive branch doing that. And in Texas, unfortunately, I always ask this question, who runs Texas? And it's a bureaucratic state. It's an administrative state. And unfortunately, most of those folks are all Democrats, of course. We saw what happened in Washington we've been gaslighted forever. And, I always say this, no one likes cleaning out the garage, but I plan on doing that. And everyone likes pulling in when it's done. But our heritage is quite clear, and it really is. And we're very independent. We're very unique, and we're very special. And as you mentioned the other night when I was there, I mean, our brand is second to none. It really is. Everyone in the world knows Texas. There's nowhere you can go on the Earth planet that they haven't seen, like you said, country, Western movies and things like that. Hollywood made Texas famous. But let me tell you, the Alamo is real. San Jacinto is real. Those are battles. And then, I like pointing out to people real quick that they weren't necessarily military battles at the Alamo when everyone was slaughtered. We all know what Bowie and Crockett, we know that. These were battles fought by civilians that took up arms against tyrants, and they were slaughtered. But that's very unique. That's what the main thing that makes these battles. That Texas was an independent country when we declared independence, and we had our own currency. We had our own president for over a decade before we voted to join the Union.
You know, Don, the reason this is so timely is that we've had the day I gave the speech, and Glenn Beck was there, and Gerd Wilders to give the warning from Europe. Gerd Wilders is one of the great heroes in the world. Is that we had this fiasco in Minneapolis, and I worked over the weekend both on getting the Texas show up and running. I also worked as much time with what's happening in Minneapolis and different things that are coming out today, tomorrow, the next day with Don Hoke and others that are coming out with these more detailed explanations of what's happening in Minneapolis, and it's 10 times worse than just the daycare centers. I mean, that's part of your responsibility. Part of your responsibility, and the reason you and I have talked offline that you're so enthusiastic, you're going to be the guardian that goes in and makes sure that if there are those types of situations in Texas, you get to the bottom of it quickly, but as importantly, that it could never happen again, what's happening in Minneapolis in Texas, sir.
That's exactly right. Look, we've only had 3 Republican comptrollers in the history of our state. And I'm ventured to say I'm the first, when I win, I'll be the first actual Republican to sit there. And let me just, point out something. I'm the MAGA candidate. I've supported the president 16, 20, 24. I've bundled money for him, donated money for him. I've been a delegate to every convention, national convention for him to vote for him. As a matter of fact, 2 of my sons worked in Washington in the 20 campaign, and one of my sons worked in there in the White House today.
Your mandate as comptroller, what is your mandate, particularly as we found just in a cursory investigation, just off of public documentation coming out of the comptroller's office? It looks like either tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, in some case with the federal government, maybe billions of dollars that have gone to support some of these Islamic either centers, schools, etc. And people are very confused. Obviously, we're going to do a deeper investigation and get to the bottom of it. But from the comptroller's office, what is actually your mandate?
Well, I can tell you this. I'm not going to let any money be spent anywhere in the state of Texas by any organization or affiliation with terrorist organizations. The governor's already declared CARE and Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organizations. I'm going to make sure no money goes out. I'm not looking for the permission from the legislature, contrary to what Debbie said. I love Debbie. She's endorsed my campaign and she's great. Look, I'm taking the comptroller's position to a place it's never been. I'm going to make sure that we do not give any money to anyone that's promoting Sharia law, that's any group or organization that has any affiliation with these terrorist organizations. And it's not just those, Steve. Illegals in the state of Texas, we need to deport every single one of them out of the state of Texas. We have right now, we're spending about $8 billion educating illegals, for instance, in our school system, our government school system, wow, of kids that aren't supposed to be here. We've been doing that since the 1982 Pollard Smith case in Smith County, Texas. And that's something that other states don't have to deal with. As Texas taxpayers have been suffering for decades with this problem.
Don, we're going to spend a lot more time with you between now and March 3rd, but can you give people where to go to find it? I think your commitment to say, hey, you're not going to let a situation like Minneapolis happen in Texas. Now, maybe it already happened. You'll find out with your investigation and stop it. Right. But just knowing you have the political will to do that, because that thing up there is horrible. More information is coming out. Like I said tonight, watch Laura Ingraham, by the way, tonight. Don Hoke's going to be up there, one of the investigators on the Laura Ingraham show. Don, where can people find out more about you and your campaign, sir?
Well, I'm the only MAGA candidate in this race. And if you want to stop Sharia law in the state of Texas and you want to put people in jail for stealing our money, your money, you need to go to donhuffines.com. Don Huffines, HUFFINES.com. You can read about my platform, everything I'm going to do, and I do what I say I'm going to do.
Don Huffines, you're tough as boot leather. You got that Texas cussedness that we need in this situation. We've known you for a long time, and I love you, man. Thank you so much. And thank you for running, putting yourself out there. We appreciate it. Everybody in the world.
You're
Thank you, sir.
welcome.